Hey folks, well good evening. I'm John Stoll. I'm the Managing Director of Customer Utilities at Chelan County PUD. Appreciate everyone's time and coming out to our informational meeting. Tonight's meeting is really focused on the information that we've been working on for nearly 9 months around cryptocurrency, what staff has been working on. We've been in a moratorium since March. That has given us time to work on a rate structure. What you'll hear is staff's presentation on this. Several of you, I think, have followed some of this along the way, so some of this may be a bit repetitive, but what we are here is, again, presenting more details around that rate. Our goal, and Lindsay Mons will present that, is to get through that fairly quickly so folks have opportunity to ask questions, things of that nature. Again, this is informational. This is being recorded as well as being noted by our folks here to be reported back. We have a next public hearing scheduled with our board on the 19th at 1 p.m., and that's down at the Wenatchee office. Typically, those hearings, again, are another opportunity for public comment. I doubt the board would act on it on the 19th. Typically, they then allow for another 2 weeks to the next board meeting. That would probably be the schedule that would play out. But again, this is just another opportunity to present more information and answer any questions you may have. Before we get going, maybe just a couple of safety notes. In case of an emergency and you need to escape the building, obviously the way you came in, but straight out through the door, you'll see there's an emergency exit there as well. And to start this meeting, and usually with most of our board meetings, we start with a Pledge of Allegiance, and I'll ask Kathy Melton to start that. Thank you, and with that, I'll turn this over to Lindsay Mon.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everybody, for coming tonight to hear a little bit more about the rate that we're proposing for cryptocurrency. So we've been talking about this for quite some time now, for those of you who have been involved with us. And tonight's meeting really is just to get into some more detail on the rate itself and answer questions that you may have on how it works, on how it might apply to you, how you calculate what impact it might have, things like that. So here we go. So we'll also talk about starting off what's changed. So in September was the last time we met with our board and discussed with them rates and gave them some options and ideas at the time. So we'll talk about what we've done since then on the rate side of things and what our proposed rate schedule is now. We'll look at some example bills and how to calculate new costs using the components that are already on your bill today, and then talk just brief review of upfront costs and next steps. So since September, what's changed, and more importantly, what hasn't changed? Things that haven't changed are our proposals on the basic rate components. So our customer charge, which is, if you've been following us, originally we proposed a fixed rate for all customers of all sizes. But we heard from you the impact that would have to your businesses and operations, and have gone back to a tiered rate structure, just like it is in the current Schedule 35 that you may be paying right now. On the demand charge side of things, so this is when you use your energy, the peak amount of energy you use within the month. The demand charges we've proposed in previous meetings remain the same today, which is $5.50 a month in our commercial and industrial, and a tiered or a phased-in rate on our residential side of things. And then the upfront charges also have not changed since we spoke last. The things that have changed, however, are on the energy rate side of things. So this is the charge for usage throughout the month. So your meter is always running. It's keeping track of how many kilowatt hours you use per month. Previously, we talked about having a variable rate for customers over a megawatt. We've increased that to 3 megawatts. So we heard from customers about the impact as far as predictability of rates or monthly bills, things like that. So we have broadened or widened that eligibility area up to 3 megawatts for that periodically fixed energy rate. When we do periodically set that energy rate, it is based on what market rates are at the time. So since the last time we talked, we have adjusted that what would be a fixed amount up 0.2 cents a kilowatt hour based on the market conditions we're seeing today. And then the third bullet here, kind of right in the middle of the screen, is that we have proposed an addition of a demand exceedance charge in lieu of those higher customer charges. So if you remember when we were talking about customer charges, the increase in those was based on the increased customer service and impact to the system that customers within this class are having. And so instead of the fixed amount for all customers, we proposed a demand exceedance charge just for those customers who are exceeding what's been authorized. And we'll talk some more about that in a bit. So kind of going back to square one, why are we here? Why are we developing a new rate? So back in late 2017, early 2018, we had a significant increase in our applications or interest in service for cryptocurrency type load, going from our 21 operating services at about 7 megawatts up to an increase of over 200 megawatts. That's basically doubling the size of our existing annual average load. Because of that, that creates a great deal of system cost, energy cost, and customer service cost. So in order to address that, the board put on a moratorium while we could look at rates for this particular customer group. And with, as I mentioned, those new and accelerated costs, here's some kind of pictures, I guess you'd say. You'll see these kind of in the upper corner of some of the slides as we go forward, indicating kind of which of these particular costs are being addressed by the rate components proposed along the way. So with every new rate, we have to have a new rate schedule definition. So this is, I'm not going to read this whole thing. It's in your packet on the third page in applying to customers that are cryptocurrency mining or other data processing load that looks to us like cryptocurrency mining. Of course, we can't see into your operations. All we can see is the impact it has on our system. So those customers that have the same impact on the system would be eligible for this rate class. And then the nitty-gritty of the actual rate schedule. This is a busy slide, but important for you to see kind of the difference between your existing rate schedule. Schedule 35 is what most cryptocurrency customers are on right now. That schedule looks very similar to kind of the left-hand side here, the first effective with the basic charge tiers in the 3 different areas, monthly demand charge of $5.50, and then the change that I mentioned in this group is this 5.31 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's the difference from existing rate schedules for commercial industrial. This is the rate that would be in place for all cryptocurrency, both residential and commercial industrial, for the first year from April 1st, 2019 till April 1st, 2020. And then in 2020 is when we would implement this residential demand charge, reflecting the increased cost of delivery in the residential area, just the additional infrastructure required and risk in those services. Kind of in the fine print, which gets extra fine on your copies, I noticed, it talks about how the market rate is calculated. So the market rate, which is a component of the energy charge, is based on what we see in our forward price indices that we look at for market pricing for the period of the April 1st year to the next April 1st. So we would review that on an annual basis to look for changes in our market forecast. The number that's used here is based on October 23rd market estimate. So we do anticipate having another update before the rate is set, and we don't know at this point whether that'll go up or down. The last increase was 0.2 cents, as I mentioned before. The new addition that we haven't talked about as a group yet before is the demand exceedance charge. So demand is one component of the bill, the demand charge based on your peak demand in the month. And each authorized user is given or applies for a specific peak demand, be it 10 megawatts or 10 kilowatts or 100 kilowatts or something greater than that. And we monitor that every month to make sure that exceedances that do happen are that you're notified of exceedances and that we're able to monitor our system for the safety of our infrastructure and for the public. Those demand exceedances, however, do shorten the lifespan of our equipment. In most cases, customers that apply want as much capacity as possible. So when we do our evaluations, we do look at what is the most amount that we can give you. So when you do exceed that amount, it does impact our system. So the demand exceedance rate is a way to address that. So those customers that exceed their demand for the month would be assessed a $150 fee plus a daily charge for each day that you've exceeded that demand exceedance at 1.5 times the applicable demand rate. This does, however, or is not exclusive of our right or need to disconnect load. So your authorized peak load is just that. It's what you're authorized to, and when you do exceed it, you could be put up for disconnection. This is just a cost recovery mechanism. We don't actually see this with most customers or over long periods of time, but it is a cost that we incur associated with monitoring and addressing those exceedances. So the discussion that I've had so far on the rate tonight is associated with loads less than 3 megawatts. So those are the loads that we've determined best qualify for kind of a fixed sort of energy rate. Anything over a megawatt or over 3 megawatts would have a contract rate that may also include those variable market rate energy prices that we've talked about before, minimum demand charges, and other ancillary engineering services that are required to serve the load. So those would all be analyzed on a case-by-case basis depending on size. So getting down into how to calculate costs, I'm not sure how well you can see this slide, but it is in your handouts as well. These are what are called the bill lines from our customer information system and should look very similar to what you might see on your monthly bill that you receive in the mail. The first line is associated with your kilowatt hours. So this is the kind of constant spinning like your odometer on your car. Each mile you drive, you click another over on the odometer. The kilowatt hours are very similar to that. The demand is the next line here, and that's kind of perhaps associated with your speedometer, so how fast you go at any one point in the month. This is the peak of that particular meter. And then a basic charge. And this particular customer is located within one of our local cities, be it Kashmir, Wenatchee, Chelan, who all have a city tax in place. This is not part of our rate. It's charged by the city itself, so we don't include that in our rate analysis, but just for your information, that is another component of your bill, some of you. So our existing bills at the rates they are right now under Schedule 35 on this particular non-residential customer, so a commercial industrial type customer, averages out about 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour. So it's a very high what we call load factor, which means the load is very flat. Not a lot of ancillary use over probably just the mining machines themselves. Under the new rate, with the increase in April of 2019 to the 5.31 cents a kilowatt hour, this particular bill would increase to about 6.2 cents a kilowatt hour. When we talk about residential customers, also very similar bill lines. This particular customer is not within city limits, so they don't have that city tax component. The calculated average cost here is 5.3 cents a kilowatt hour. And that is different from the non-residential because of the way the energy is used in a residential service. So there may be that flat cryptocurrency or mining load, but then on top of that is sort of a kind of a residential demand. So your heater, your HVAC, your oven, your microwave, dryer, all those things that you use within the house create an additional demand on top of the cryptocurrency. And because that's not flat in the same way, it creates what's called a lower load factor. So in this case, it's about 50% load factor, which creates that higher effective rate. So when you're billing different components on different types of uses, it impacts that effective rate. It doesn't mean your rate components are different. It just means how you use the energy is different. So in April of 2019, when we increased just the energy charge, this particular bill would go up to about 7.9 cents a kilowatt hour on an effective rate basis. And then in April of 2020, with the increase in the demand charge, it would increase to about 10.5 cents a kilowatt hour. So residential customers in particular have a unique capability of impacting what this actually looks like. So some utilities in the U.S. have started implementing what's a residential demand on all customers. And so there's a lot of information out there on how do you decrease your residential demand. Things like not running your dishwasher and your dryer and your oven at the same time, because all those do is stack up on your demand charge. So as well as you can, leveling your residential use will impact and lower your effective rate. It also creates less impact on the electrical system as well. So that's an added. So upfront costs. These have not changed since we've talked before, so I won't spend a whole lot of time here, but certainly if you have additional questions when we have the question and answer period, you're more than welcome to ask for additional detail. The upfront costs are based on a distribution component and a transmission component. The distribution component is the same regardless of where you are in our service area. It is based on available capacity though as well. So just the willingness to pay the upfront charge doesn't mean that we have the ability to connect at that time. The transmission component is different in various parts of our system because of the congestion within the transmission itself. So within the Wenatchee corridor, which includes substations generally in the Monitor, Old Station, Wenatchee, Malaga areas, the transmission and distribution upfront charge are together $325 a kW. So based on that peak demand that we talked about earlier, this would be the charge for the upfront infrastructure cost. In other areas, we have very limited capacity in our transmission system and very high cost to rebuild or build additional transmission capacity to those areas. So outside of the Wenatchee corridor, that increases to $720 a kW. We are excluding substations in the Burn, Coles Corner, Plain, Lake Wenatchee, and Summit areas for being eligible under this rate schedule because of that transmission capacity availability. The lines that service those particular areas are in, say, forest service areas, places where we can't rebuild necessarily, or it would be extremely costly to try to add capacity in those areas. So at this time, we're excluding those substations from this, from any HDL or cryptocurrency service. And then any connection requests over 5 megawatts, as was before, remain at actual cost. When we do the capacity review that I mentioned for these, the sort of things that we look at are the load type, be it residential, commercial, industrial, compared to the service that perhaps is being taken over or being utilized for the new type of use. We look at our system capacity and the ability of our local load growth to continue. It takes us about 5 years to site and build a new substation. So in order to maintain our ability to serve, we look to make sure that we have that capacity for 5 years. We look at the impact to operating characteristics, our reliability, safety, and our asset longevity as well. Other items, diversity of the feeder and substations. So as different types of loads, the greater number of different types of loads you have on a substation, the better for reliability sake, service. And then we are watching related efforts with the county and municipalities that may impact our capacity reviews. Following tonight's meeting, we do have another meeting, as John mentioned, on the 19th, where the board will hear additional public comment, and we'll also talk about the moratorium at that time. So I don't have information on the moratorium tonight. That will be on the 19th at 1 p.m. We'll consider the rate recommendation and look at the fees and charges update. We're also working at drafting new customer agreements, the application process, and associated policy and regulation associated with new loads. So that's kind of where we are right now. I think now would be a good time to take questions or additional. See if I missed anything. If anybody has questions, we have a microphone right up here. Take those. The question was whether we're planning a residential demand charge, so just in general, non-cryptocurrency or HDL.
Sorry to interrupt, but just for the sake of the audience who may listen to this, if you'd use the microphone and your name and address is always helpful for our commissioners.
Tom Lindell. Is the PD planning on a demand charge for residential?
We've not discussed one for general residential.
Is there any chance that the PUD, I'm a very small operator, I have just a few machines. Is there any way that the PUD would, let's say I wanted to put 10 machines someplace, the maximum that I could put was maybe 20. Would an engineer be able to figure out and say, listen, if you're not going to run maximum, then would there be any way to have I realize that, you guys have calculated out how long your transformers are going to last. You've given them a life. So if we were to run less machines than an engineer calculate, or let the engineer calculate what would be the safe amount rather than running at maximum, is that an option at all?
Well, that would be something you'd want to consider in your application process, because that maximum amount or the lesser amount is what you pay your upfront charges on. So that's how we evaluate that component and save you costs there.
Have you,
Yeah.
I
Can you give us
understand.
your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, Gail McDonough, live in Wenatchee. Has there been an estimate on how much of the, I understand there's a coal-fired auxiliary power source for times when the load gets very high? Have I got that wrong? I heard it. Anyway, my question about that is, if there is such a thing, is it anticipated that non-hydro power is going to be increased?
So any power that we purchase for this particular class would be what we consider green power. So it would not be that coal. And I'm not sure what. I don't have the expert in what you were mentioning. No, it would not be. We would purchase green power that would be either any sort of hydro, renewable, wind, that type.
Wind, solar, hydro.
Okay. Just maybe answer your question about coal. Our load is all served with power from our hydros for the majority of the year. We do have those times where with 0 degrees out and we can't cover our load that we have to go out on the open market, but generally that's purchasing, kind of the regional mix,
Right.
which is primarily hydropower.
Okay. Well, the figure that I saw in some of the printed material was that 98% of the PUD's power is not hydro, and that a coal plant somewhere is in the mix.
It would probably, that high 90 is what is hydropower. And then just those really rare times we have to go out and cover our load.
Mhm.
is when we would buy that regional mix, which
Okay.
is a blend of,
Okay.
all the resources that are
Right.
out there.
So then I can refine the question a little. Are you anticipating that there is going to be more of that purchasing mixed power as a result of cryptocurrency's addition to the demand,
I
like in
guess
the winter?
that we'll just have to see how many applications we get based on, the, the rate that we're putting forward, and if that's adopted, and what that means for folks who are interested in doing that. At this point, we don't know.
Okay. And I'm sorry to keep asking more questions, but it's all part of the same question. If additional not green power is necessary, and you have to buy that from other places, I guess, is what you're saying. Can a portion of cryptocurrency rates or fees or what have you, can a part of that be set aside so that we can build solar and wind facilities here? Our dams are getting old and the demand is growing and it's not going to stop. So that's my big question about this. Is there some way that we can stay green, that we're not going to have to breathe coal-fired smoke and see climate change effects because of cryptocurrency?
I guess I would just follow up that when this rate is priced, and you heard Lindsay talk about it, it looks at that average market price that's out there that's generally reflective of, this hydro-based system that we enjoy in the Northwest. So,
Yeah.
but your point's well taken.
I mean, it seems logical to set something aside toward that eventuality.
Yeah.
Other questions? Yeah. Come on up.
Roberto Ocampo, here from Wenatchee. Good evening, guys, everyone. Assuming the demand, it says, why develop a new rates, right? And based on these prices, now Virginia, Idaho, Nebraska, a lot of states, even at 4.2 large scale over 20 megawatts, would be even better for large mining operations to be at without the upfront capital charge and all this stuff. Why am I saying this? Is based on how many applications will go through, and what if not all the applications that you guys have or considering will go through? The rate's still gonna be in place for the current operations? I wonder, because now it's not gonna be feasible to go here, then go Virginia. So why a big operation come over here, which is gonna be expensive, which means the main reason that you guys are raising up the rates to serve the new load. Am I correct on that?
If I understand your question correctly, that is really one of the reasons why we develop a new rate, is because we have no predictability as far as when the load is interested in coming here, what would make them move. So we have 200 megawatts of applications one day and maybe they drop off the next. So when we plan our energy portfolio as far as how we sell the power from our hydro projects, we have to plan that on more of a steady state basis. So for cryptocurrency loads, we would have to purchase power on the market to address those variabilities, either the significant increase or a significant decrease, which is what's reflected in the energy price.
So in an hypothetical way, if we, as PUD, close new mining operations, means that there is no reason to increase or change rates. Is that right? Like cease totally new operations of crypto at all, like new services or for crypto. Would you guys
Oh, if
still
someone
increase the
other
rates?
than the PUD were to do that?
Yeah.
We've not really discussed that. I mean, I think what they do in their particular operations is, or policies and regulations is separate from the PUD. And as of right now, they are still authorizing or allowing cryptocurrency mining. So we have to plan for what we know.
Anyway, this meeting is not open to discussion, right? It's just the information that you guys are giving out. Or
There's
is,
no,
it was a discussion?
this-
It was,
there's no decision being made tonight. Is that what you're?
oh,
You're welcome. Yeah, the 19th, November 19th is when the board will consider the rate again. Yes. Okay. You could come up, state your name.
name is Gustavo Montoya. So a follow-up question on that, if no decision is going to be made between now and that time, is there time to discuss it further before a decision is made?
This is our proposal to the board on the 19th, what you've seen here tonight, and we will take your feedback, and you're also welcome to come to the meeting and provide feedback directly to the board.
So when is that decision being sent to the board?
We're discussing this with them, and the public comment is on the 19th, and then we don't know when or if they would make a decision. Then that day, probably not. December 3rd would be our next meeting with them.
What I'm trying to get to is there an opportunity to discuss it more in a follow-up question to what Mr. Ocampo said, so that when it's passed on to the board, they have more information from the public?
Right now, based on the questions as far as if we were to not get the load or the applications that we anticipated, we still do have all of those applications. Most of them, only a couple have canceled their applications, so we are still considering those to be active inquiries. So we are not in that situation where we've lost a bunch of interest.
Well, I think the point is that maybe there needs to be more discussion about the rates before it can go over to the board. That's what I'm trying to get. Is there time for people in the public to have discussions that are much more engaged, that may take more hours before it goes to the board? That's the question.
the thing is, with these new rates, it's not going to be feasible to mine here. I mean, like in a large scale. Even 3 megawatts, I'll move to Virginia or to Idaho. That's it. And new rates, because I have 2 transformers, 2.5 megawatts there with less than, way less, and not upfront capital costs. That's what I'm saying. I may drive there 5 hours. I mean, not too far from here. That's what I'm saying. With the new rates, I mean, a lot of the applications are going to fail off. I believe it's not something that I'm really saying. I'm just thinking of myself and saying loud. And if that it's part of that old calculation, and then most of them fell off, just in case, I don't want to have my local operations to be tied to that new rate, even though if it is 64 kilowatts. So that's what I'm trying to kind of cover or at least review.
Okay. You're welcome. Yeah, so just clarification for Gustavo as well. These rates are based on our costs. So when we look at what it costs us to serve, load, and purchase power for this particular type of use, this is the cost that we see. If we were not to charge our costs, that would mean somebody else is paying that bill or picking up the rest. So know that, and then our board is always interested in hearing from you in person or in writing, or we do have a link on our website as well to provide comment.
I'm Becky Peters,
Hi, Becky.
and this graphic right here, it caught my attention because it's showing that you have 21 operating cryptocurrency services currently in Chelan County. I have one. And these requests for service, there was a bubble when this happened. The bubble's gone now. It costs half a Bitcoin right now to mine a Bitcoin, as far as the power goes. So if you raise to Schedule 36, then you won't have 21 cryptocurrency miners in Chelan County anymore. Everybody will be out of business, and so you won't have to worry about this at all. So this is really nothing, because if you're going to charge so much that these guys can't stay in business, then these guys don't matter much either. Plus, that was a bubble, and those people really are not coming. And so this is rates for nothing or for nobody. Is the way I see it. Thank you.
I'm Bart Clennon, I'm a local resident, and I have more a comment than I do a question. It seems to me that you've been through quite a long and thoughtful process, and from what I've seen, it seems to me you've reached out to get information as much as you can, and I just want to say as a citizen that I appreciate that and respect and like not into all the details, but really am behind what you're trying to do. You have a goal that's the best for the most for the longest. And I think this is a really tough issue because when you get into best for the most, how do you apply that and so on? And also from what I read, for the longest is somewhat uncertain in a lot of things you read. So to me, you've tried to apply the motto as best you can and put an awful lot of time and energy into it. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we met before, so thank you for that meeting
Yeah.
with a couple of the folks that are here. How many of those meetings have taken place to really understand the small miners and the small business by the PUD? How many meetings have taken place to get that feedback?
The meeting
Meetings
that I
like,
had with you was the
meetings
only
like
other
that,
one.
where
But I'm not sure of others. I'm not the customer service director, and I know he's had several meetings with people, so I couldn't tell you a number of meetings.
could we find that out? Just to see how
Um,
much feedback the PUD has received from small businesses that are trying to mine?
All the feedback that we've formally received has been posted on our website for people to see. Just to say again, these rates are based on actual costs. We don't have economic development authority as a PUD, so considering impact, we consider impact as much as we can, and you've seen that in the way that our proposal is developed along the way, taking into account the comments that we've heard from you all at the various public meetings.
Well, I appreciate that. I think it's important to have more conversation because in one, back and forth through emails, through the website, I don't think conversation is taking place. And one of the things that I have found with many of the folks that I've been able to meet over this process, that you're dealing with a lot of engineers and people that are professionals that could feedback a lot of information that can be very valuable to the decisions that are being made. Thank you.
I would offer just as another point that through the moratorium process, we've had probably, I would say, several, more than a half dozen public meetings on this issue. An example would be some of the feedback from the smaller miners. We originally looked at a variable energy rate that would be calculated monthly, and the feedback was, just managing that as a small miner would be pretty difficult. So the board heard that, and staff heard that as well. So I think you saw that reflected in having more of a stable rate that people could look at and say, okay, this now I know what my cost will be, at least at a longer term than month to month. So just a point.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Aubin Honeyset. I live at 1802 Manhattan Drive in East Wenatchee. And I just have to say that this is a real shame. We had an opportunity to be at the forefront of a huge upcoming industry, and Wenatchee doesn't have a whole lot of new industries in this area. And what's essentially happened is it has been squashed. We have not only like expended so much time trying to figure out this stuff that people are not able to operate in a way that would be feasible. So some people have relocated to different locations, and those different locations are not renewable energy spots. They're using coal burning power to be able to do the same services that we wanted to do here on renewable energy sources. It's just, it's frustrating too because, you know, like we did have a meeting together, and when we spoke, one of the things that I asked you was, what is it that you guys need from miners? I will do my best to get information, to get any kind of like way that we can all come together and meet on a middle ground, and that obviously wasn't important to the PUD. So it's just a real shame that this is going to happen and that people are going to go to other spots. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if we were in the Wenatchee area and I had any kind of like way to help or control any of this, then I would jump on an opportunity to have this huge new industry that could cause, you know, offer millions of dollars in revenue to this area. And I mean, nobody tried to do anything. Everybody stepped on the brakes. Everything was shut down and frozen. And now it's not going to work. So that sucks. Thanks.
Thank you.
Tom Lindell. Some of the articles Wenatchee World prints called miners, fly by night, transitory, pull everything and leave. And a conversation I had with one of the PUD guys that I dealt with was, I've lived here all my life. I am not a miner. I mean, I have some machines. It's confusing, but I have somebody that takes care of it for me. I'm not going anywhere. At the current price of Bitcoin, because I watch it, yes, we've made money. This month, no, there's nothing. I mean, I know how much I mine every day. So I feel that these fees at the PUDs, I mean, maybe that is really your cost, and that's what it's going to be. Some of these other folks here, they will leave. They're going to go somewhere else. When it's not cost effective for me to run my machines, then I'll shut mine off. And then I'll take the building that I had a miner in that apparently was not able to make it, and then I will rent the building back out to somebody else. I'm not going anywhere. But if you do this at the current price of Bitcoin, these big operations, they will leave and they won't come here. So I'm sure the PUD's got somebody has figured out that cost effective, you know, the people that are applying for more megawatts, they'll pull their application. I don't understand all of it. I see Douglas County, I drive out to the airport there, and somebody is spending millions and millions and millions of dollars putting the infrastructure in for mining. But I never hear the controversy with Douglas County PD. What they're doing must be way different than what you're doing. I've had enough. Thanks.
All right. I don't. Oh. All right. We don't have any more questions. Then. Well. Okay.
The matter of coal fire, things like that, we really would have the opportunity here to take a look at new construction and utilizing mining in a way to heat buildings and do a bunch of very interesting things. But in order to help pay for that type of thing, it did benefit with the previous rate structure to be able to have that bootstrap itself. With rates like this, it basically squashes that type of innovation locally. Some of the applications will dry up, some of them won't. Some of them are funded by huge hedge fund operations, and they have discretionary income that it's worth it to them to bet on the future, and they will operate at a loss. They will be operating at a loss, but they have deep enough pockets to do that. Smaller homegrown, Wenatchee-based operations, as far as I know, don't have that deep of pockets. So what it's going to do is it's going to push local ownership out and only have those that can afford to be able to do that. I think that's a shame. And I understand that the PUD has to look at it from their costs and the cost to distribute and do all that. It's unfortunate, though, that we can't come together as a community and look at the whole and the possibility. The name of the company that we are doing mining operation and cryptocurrency stuff with is called Silicon Orchard. That's the way I view it, is that it is a resource that can be tapped, that we have here, and the total economic opportunity just isn't in mining. If it is a center, if we were able to have mining, then there's other services in development, computer programming, all types of things will start to surround it and affect the entire economy of the area in a very progressive way. So I feel like there's a broader scope in some of this that I don't feel is really being looked at.
All right. We don't have any other questions out there. I'll give the last call for questions. And then all right. Thank you all again for coming. Just as a reminder, our next meeting is on November 19th with our board, where they will be accepting public comment and feedback on this rate proposal.